Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Kṛṣṇa Hare Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma Hare Rāma 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 Hare 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 Kṛṣṇa Hare Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma Hare Rāma 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 Hare 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 Kṛṣṇa Hare Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma Hare Rāma 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Mishnapad Paramahansa Parivijikacharya Ashtoktara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivijikacharya Ashtoktara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavad-gītā Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 18th day of November, is it 18th? 18th. 18th day of November 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad-Bhagavad-gītā as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 13 entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. And we'll read, I think we'll chant the first verse of the 8 to 12 on the bottom of page 537. We'll chant that together, and I'll read the translation. And then Mohammed will remind me exactly where we are. 541? As for detachment? Okay. Okay. So text 8 on the bottom of 537. Amanitvam madambitvam ahimsa chantararjavam achayopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha amanitvam madambitvam ahimsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha. Okay, you're on. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha. Ladies. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha. You want to try? Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stayamatma viningraha. Bhakta Chad. I guess not. He's back there in Nebraska. Okay. I'm sorry? Anyone else? I guess not. All right, I'll just read the translation, then we'll skip to our place. It's such a long purport, we've been reading it in pieces here. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. And we're at the bottom of page 541, the element of detachment. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should not have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, and accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Have some discussion on books like the Bhagavad-gītā and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if it is not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life, because in this world, one can never be fully happy or fully miserable. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, this is a big one. Detachment from children, wife, and home. So, the whole purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to enlighten us, give us knowledge about who we really are, what the goal of human life is, and how to achieve it. So, the first lesson, as we can remember from chapter 2, is that we're not this body. We're soul, we're pure spirit soul. That's a very important foundation to any further progress in spiritual life. And with a little contemplation, we can realize that Krishna has this wonderful verse, it's at text 13 of chapter 2, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumadam yauvanam jala tata dehantara praptir dhiras tattva namuyate. So, he explains there, or he asks us to remember how we have passed already through so many different bodies. Everyone here is once 8 years old, I assume, right? Is anyone not? And we can remember a few things from that, you know, and from previous parts of our life. So if we go back, we think, okay, I can remember that I had that experience. I had a different body. My body was much smaller, and my mind has not been developed, so my thoughts were different. And I went through whatever it was. Some of it was happy, some of it was sad, distressing, whatever it may be. And then I grew older, and then I had different experiences. And now my mind was developing in education, in school, and my understanding of the world was developing. But the main point is that we were different. We were smaller, you know, and we had so many different desires then, childish desires that we then discarded and had other more different desires. So the point is, both the physical body and the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, they're changing. They're radically different from what they are now. But we're all the same persons as we were then. Probably have the same name. Well, anyone who's married, any lady who's married may have changed her name. But the point is, that's not the real consideration. But we can see that, okay, so then the question is, okay, what's the same? The mind has changed, certainly. The body has changed. What hasn't changed? I haven't changed. I'm not the body. I am the consciousness within the body. That's the whole point. So dehinosmin yatare komadam. So that's the foundational principle. If you can't accept that, then you can't take the next step. And the next step is really to understand that we've had bodies before. Now this is of course, we have to take this on faith. We can't remember those bodies, but for that we need to develop faith in the Shastra itself, the words of Krishna, and in those who have followed those words and become self-realized. And that's why we always offer obeisance to the disciplic succession. Om Jnanam Param, Om Jnana Timadanasya Jnanandana Shalaya Chakshu Umantam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So that's an homage unto our present Acharya, our teachers. Not just the great Acharya Srila Prabhupada, who's of course the founder Acharya of this institution, but also all those who came before, who he offers respect to, the beginning of his introduction. And we have a wonderful list at the end of the introduction. If you go to this introduction, it goes all the way back to Krishna. Lord Chaitanya is in the list, of course, and coming down. Now, why is this so important? Because this, we can't see the soul. We have induced the existence of the soul by, following this one verse of Krishna's in this book. But there's so much more that we can't really understand with our present senses. The very existence of a Supreme Personality of Godhead who has existed forever and who is creating everything, who knows everything. I remember when I first read the Bhagavad Gita, the most astounding verse that Krishna speaks about himself, for me at that point, was that I know everything that's happened in the past. Everything. Everything that's happened in all the millions and countless universes. Inconceivable. I know everything that's happening now. That in itself is all concealed. And then the most amazing, I know everything that will happen in the future, because they're all based on what's happening now, right? So that is obviously beyond the scope of any living entity besides the Supreme Living Entity. But so our first understanding can be based somewhat on our intuition due to just contemplating our own life, that we're soul, not the body, which is essential. But then the existence of God, the existence of a spiritual world, the fact that, Prabhupada's immortal phrase, go back home, back to Godhead, going back home as the goal of life, that there is a place, a Godhead, internal. We can't know any of that with our present senses. But that's why, what does Rupa Goswami say as the first element of the ladder, going from faith to love? The foundation is faith. It has to be faith. And that faith is faith in that there is a God, and faith that there is a realized souls, such as Srila Prabhupada, who can enlighten us, who Prabhupada called them the via media, or the transparent medium through which God can reach us through the words of the spiritual master. And, Srila Prabhupada, the foundation, if you will, the essential element, one of the main essential element in his preaching was that he gave it to us in English, that we could the language that we could understand. And through the gateway to the English, the books have been translated into probably 100 languages by now. So that foundation is there. And then Krishna here in the Bhagavad Gita, he's drawing us along. Now here he's given us this long list of qualities that we want to cultivate, we need to cultivate, if we are going to make spiritual progress. And here, this one is this idea of detachment. Now this is a challenge, because material life means cultivating various attachments, and also along the way, aversions, right? It's just what happens. Prabhupada likes to speak about the little child, in his mother's arms, she's cooking something, and the child wants to put his hand into the fire. It's very fascinating. He says, no, whoops. It can be like that. And the child is, getting more determined, and so finally says, okay, go ahead. So he puts his hand in the fire. Never again. Once burned, twice shy. Isn't that one? So that's one way of understanding, direct perception. But there's so many things about spiritual life that you can't really do that with directed perception. You have to have faith, just like the mantra, this Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra. So there's nothing in Western culture, that can prepare you for even the phenomenon of a mantra being chanted. What to speak of the Maha Mantra, the greatest mantra for deliverance. But any kind of mantra, there's so many mantras you can cast a spell on snakes, right? There's a way of doing it so that won't bite or counteract the poison. So many things. So the power of that's just not here in the Western culture. We know the power of music, rock music to get us going or whatever, but it's very crude compared to anything like that. But when you come into the association, you're curious about these Hare Krishnas, and you go to a center, maybe a nice center like this, with nice kirtan, and you just join the kirtan or you just hear it. I always like to say, well, okay, the aratik's going on. Well, I certainly don't believe in the idols. What's this singing? You're standing in the corner there. You just wandered in. You say, okay, there's Sunday feast. Show me. I'm curious. But you're hearing. And if you're hearing, you have to be hearing the mantra, and you're seeing the effect and so forth, then it's at least intriguing, enough for you to stay for the Sunday feast lecture and maybe get a little pamphlet or booklet or something, In other words, the very manifestation of Krishna consciousness in the form of the chanting and these whole decorations, the deities. There's so much to try to understand. You really can at first, And just to come into that environment is such a rare thing. I mean, how many millions of people are in this city? 4 or 5 million, whatever. And a smattering come every Sunday, and many of them the same people coming. But it's having its effect. There's obviously some power there. There's some interest. There's something that draws you in. And the name of Krishna, when chanted sincerely by devotees, not by someone who's doing it just for money, has a potency to enter into your mind, into your heart, and at least for the fortunate few, to make you curious about what is this all about. And so the devotees may speak to you, and fortunately may buy a book and like that. So the point I'm making is that Krishna, he wants us back. The whole point of Krishna consciousness is everything is personal. Even the things that look impersonal have a person behind them. Krishna says, 7th chapter, Bhumar Apa Ononavaya Kangmanam. These are my external energies. You see, the earth, solid matter, liquid, earth, water, fire, air, ether, progressively subtle. Then even our own mind is an element, is a subtle element. Mind, intelligence, ego. All of these are inanimate. They're given animation by contact with the soul, just like mind, intelligence. I'm using that right now. So those can be media through which we experience Krishna. This is the most important one is sound. Like, I'm not making anything up here. I'm just speaking what I learned from Bhagavad Gita and other books. And so I'm speaking it, and I have a modicum of realization. At least I can relate the transformation that my own life has taken. That took back in 1973 when I joined the Hare Krishnas. And we can see as the movement developed the power that Srila Prabhupada was transmitting through himself, through his own faith, his own personality, the power to attract others, to interest others, and to transform lives by giving them the means of bhakti, beginning with the chanting. So Krishna is now in this chapter, as we learned from Srila Prabhupada, the middle 6 chapters are the essence of the book. And it could have ended in chapter 12. Chapter 12 is Bhakti Yoga, and it's a very short chapter, you see. But these chapters, 13 through 18, they expand on themes and that where we learned before. We learned about the modes of nature in chapter 7, very important verse, Daivi Yesha Gunamahi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mame Viye Papadente Maya Me Tang Tarantite. My dear Arjun, this world of mine is my energy. It's divine because it's connected to me. And it's composed of these modes of nature. We don't have this understanding in the West. Modes of nature, we learn goodness, passion, and ignorance. And it's very difficult to cross over. You can't do it just on your own. We know that there's so much danger and difficulty, and that with a little intelligence we can understand, yes, we're getting older and we may die, so what's the point of building so many things up in this world? You know, it's all, so death is always a problem. So Krishna is describing there, Mama Maya Duratya Ma Mevi Epapadinte Maya Etang Tarandite. But those who surrender unto me can easily cross beyond it. So what does that consist of? What is that all about? To cross beyond material energy means to cross beyond birth and death. That's what he's talking about. So that's the 7th chapter. And it goes on like that. And that chapter is especially designed, he says at the very beginning, the very first words, Maya Saktamana Parta Yogam Yunyan Marashya. Now I'm going to teach you how your mind can naturally be drawn to me. Because chapter 6 was all about Ashtanga yoga, was about formal yoga. We may have heard of meditative yoga, which is quite austere and difficult in this age, especially. And Arjuna, the whole point is Arjuna is meant to surrender to Krishna and fight in the battle. And Krishna is teaching him about this method of meditation, but Arjuna said, I can't do that. I'm a Kshatriya, to sit alone and just sing this way and breathe and then meditate. So Krishna says, so Arjuna says, like trying to control the wind, trying to control my mind. So Krishna encourages and says, no, yes, it's difficult, but you can do it by practice, And even if you don't succeed in this one lifetime, you'll be born in the next lifetime in a family of yogis or, wealthier but pious family that you can continue. But Arjuna's not very sanguine. He's not very hopeful, So at the end, Krishna says, don't worry. This is this mudra, You look at Radharani when you see Abhay mudra, fearless, don't worry. Yogi nama visarvesham madgaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam samayukta momata. Now in the Ashtanga yoga, they don't talk about faith. There's all this technique. You just do this, do this, do this. But bhakti is it's faith. So those, the best yogi, yogi nama madgaten antaratmana, who are always thinking of me within the heart, within themselves. Shraddhavan, who are full of, worship me with faith. This is not Ashtanga Yoga anymore. Shraddha-bhama-yomam samayukta-tamomata. Those are the best, you see. So Arjuna's relieved, you see, and the next verse, Krishna says, okay, the whole point is that the mind has to be focused on me and attached to me. Now I'm going to teach you how that can happen naturally. Maya sakta manaparta yogam. Yogam is still the yoga. So it's all bhakti yoga. That's the beginning of the middle 6 chapters. And 9th chapter is so essential. 12th chapter, it's all about bhakti. So now he's expanding nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. And we're going to hear more about, he's going through all of these important elements of knowledge. And one of them, essential is this detachment. Because what is it that keeps us here in this material world? When you go through lifetime, eventually, if you're able to get to old age, these days you never know. So, okay, get to old age, and then comes disease. What I used to be able to do, I can't do anymore. Knees hurt, oh my God. So many things. And then, the big one, death, you see? So that's facing everyone. So, therefore, one of the elements of knowledge to keep us on the path and enthusiastic, janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshanu darshanam. To see the dukkha, the evil. Evil doesn't always mean, like Putana and the demons. That's evil, certainly. But evil can also simply mean a source of suffering, any source of suffering that we want to try to avoid. So who can argue? Birth, old age, disease, and death. We've forgotten the experience of being in the womb. Wasn't pleasant, Krishna. That's one of his blessings on us. Matak smriti jnanam apovanangja. Thank you very much. But whether we forgot it or not, we know it's coming, and that we want to try to escape it. So how can we do that? Well, we have to regain our eternal identity, our eternal knowledge that we lost when we left the spiritual world. That's the idea. We're covered over. And this is a process of uncovering. The very first principle, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, and he gave us the same teachings in a way that we can follow in this age. And his very first words of his 8 essential verses, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Marjanam is to clean. By this Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra chanting, especially together in congregation, Sankirtan, then you cleanse the mirror of the mind, you see. The mind is bewildered now. We're identifying with this body, gross and subtle. So by chanting, by cleansing that mirror of the mind, then we can extinguish the blazing fire of birth and death. Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. It's not this Davagni, it's Mahadavagni, the blazing forest fire of Bhava. Bhava means becoming, birth, old age, disease, and death. And he goes on to explain the great boon of chanting, which is so easy, anyone can do it. There's no second verse, there's no hard and fast rules. Time, place, candidate, no. Anytime, anywhere, anyone can chant Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra. It's always auspicious. You go into the bathroom, you shouldn't chant any Vedic mantras. You know, any official, you know, she can chant Hare Kṛṣṇa. You know, anytime, any place. So anyway, these principles are important if we want to advance in devotional service. So detachment. Now, it's difficult because, you know, in our ordinary life, we're certainly attached to our children, wife, home, you know. And he's not saying that you have to give these up. As Prabhupada says, one can fulfill the you know, household life by turning one's home into a small little temple. Why not? It's under your control. What pictures you have on the wall, what sounds are emanating from the electronics, you know, and what you do every day. We have some very nice families here, and I remember my favorite, Gorkeshava's family. He has these 2 children. His little boy, Mukunda, he's good on the drum. He had to sit down. He was so small he couldn't carry the big drum. So when he played the drum, he sits down. But he's playing expertly, you know. And Brinda, his daughter, she's like 12, 13, something like that. Very expert. And she would sing in the morning program, the Tulsi Arti. So very beautifully. And I visited their apartment when he was here. He had a job in IT somewhere, but he had to move to Seattle to keep the job. So, and they had this big altar. You know, somebody's been to the house, you know, and all kinds of deities there and everything, and the program. And so he was doing what Prabhupada mentions here, and that you make your home into a spiritual a place where Krishna consciousness is practiced. And you teach the children from childhood. And it's a very fortunate child who was born into a home like that. You know, Prabhupada himself, especially his father, was very, you know, Prabhupada, somehow he found out about the Ratha Yatra in Puri, and he wanted to have his own Ratha Yatra, you know, there in Calcutta. So his father tried to find someone to build the cart, but he couldn't do it. But then there was this older lady who found out about Prabhupada's little Abhai's desire. I don't know how old he was, 7, 8 maybe. And so she had a little miniature Rath cart, and she gave it to him, and he was so happy. And he organized his whole, Prabhupada was always a leader. He organized his friends, you know, and they had a little Rath Yatra in Calcutta. And it's in the Lilamrita. It's very delightful. So that's a really fortunate, and that's what he's describing here. This is ideal household life. And he said, after all, you look at Lord Chaitanya's associates, and Lord Chaitanya himself, he was a householder for a while, but his, you know, so many of his associates, they were also householders, but they were also great devotees. You know, because their main business was Krishna consciousness, and they gave that to their families. So it's the material attachments that we have to purify, and that's how we could be detached. So you're detached from the children, wife, home, in terms of objects of you know, sense gratification. But you fulfill household life by centering it on Krishna. As Prabhupada said, they're not meant that one should not have no feeling for these. They're natural objects of affection. But when they're not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should be not be attached to them. So you make them favorable. You help them become more advanced, and you yourself become more advanced. Okay, should we go on? Happiness and distress. Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate, as advised in the Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress, so one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something desirable, we're very happy, and when we get something undesirable, we're distressed. But if we are actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach that stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotional service. Devotional service to Krishna without deviation means engaging oneself in the 9 processes of devotional service: chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering respect, etc., as described in the last verse of the 9th chapter. That process should be followed. Okay, so that's another quality. Happen to be dhira, equipoised. That's a very important point. That also comes up in the 2nd chapter. Krishna, Arjuna can't conceive of how he will participate and possibly kill personally his grandfather figure in Bhishma and his beloved teacher in Dronacharya and all these other relatives and friends that he sees on both sides. He says very distinctly, what's the use of me fighting this battle? If I win the battle, I'll have the kingdom, but it'll be soaked with the blood of the people I love. Forget that. I'll just go off and become a beggar. I'd rather do that. So he's showing a materialistic frame of mind. And one of the teachings in the 2nd chapter, right near the beginning, again, is this need to be tolerant of the dualities. Matra sparshasta konteya shitoshna sukadukada agama apayino anityas tam tatikshvasam bharata. The tikshasva means you have to tolerate. And he gives the example of heat and cold, winter, summer, come and go, you see? And one has to learn to tolerate them without becoming distressed, disturbed. So this equipoise is important. And really the only way to do that is to have Krishna in the center, you see, of your consciousness. So that you have this source of solace and a source of happiness and bliss with you always. You're not dependent on external circumstances for your joy in life. It's there. We have a perfect example. That's why the great devotees, that tolerance is there. Titikshava karunika. And in 7th canto, we have, of course, Prahlad Maharaj. Who can forget that movie? Did you see the movie? There's Mahavatar Nrsimha. It's great. Who sent it to me? One of you sent it to me? Yes, thank you. And, we read about it, but to see that it's wonderfully put together, that he was unshakable. He's on the lap of this isn't in the Bhagavatam, of some lady demoness like the Kritya we were just reading about, who can burn anyone, but she won't get burned. Holika. And it's graphically, and he's not freaking out, he's not screaming, he's chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then she sends her spell, and she burns up, and Hiranyakashipu freaks out. Oh my God, my dear holy God, was his sister? Someone's sister. But Prahlad was there, whatever happens. And now we're studying Ambarish Maharaj. He's just as tolerant. He's also threatened by a fiery demoness, the Kritya, and he doesn't flinch. He's just chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, whatever he's doing. And the Kritya is destroyed by the chakra. And the chakra goes after Durvasa Muni, who invoked the Kritya for the terrible offense that Maharaj Ambarish drank some water to break the fast, and instead of waiting for his guests to come take breakfast. So by his mystic potency, he could tell. And, come on. Oh, you have offended, violated that. Just boom. Just grab the Sika and pull it out. Creates this Kritya. And then the chakra goes after him, and he's not saying, okay, fine, to be killed by the chakra, that's very auspicious. He's running away. running up to Brahma, running up to Shiva. Nobody can help him. And finally he goes to Vishnu, and Vishnu says, I can't help you either. I'm completely under the control of my devotees. Whoa, what is that? The devotees, he's controlled by their love. So he gets this instruction. You have to go back down to Ambarish and surrender, which he does, and of course he's saved. But so much, but the character, you know, and the equipoise, unshakable equipoise of Ambarish and Prahlad, this is supernatural, you know. This is material life means always on your guard. Any threat, and immediately the fear, you know, comes, and the hormones, fight or flight, right? And then the whole thing. Because you're on the bodily platform. But a devotee is not on the bodily platform. He takes these things in stride. Just as Prabhupada did. He had so many threats. You know, he goes to do the Pandal, the first Calcutta Pandal. Probably 70, 71, I don't know. And they had this team of, you know, devotees that came from different temples to join him. And they were, in Calcutta at that time, they're still around, Naxalites. You probably heard of the Naxalites. Yeah. So they will send him a note, fly or die. You know, in other words, you got to get out. This is our territory. The Black Panthers tried that too. So Prabhupada, you know, he wasn't about to fly, and it certainly wasn't about to die. So they came in, and he said, okay, give them some nice seats. They don't have to pay the 2 rupees for the seats. So they're right away, you know, kind of diffused with it. So they're sitting there, and Prabhupada starts chanting the Brahma Samhita. And somewhere in the heart of these guys, you know, there's something that they learned when they were kids, you know, whatever it is, they pacified them. And then, by such a genius, Prabhupada says, actually, we're spreading spiritual communism, because they're communists, you know, materialists. And so that was interesting. And then he spoke to them. They had prasadam, you know, diffused the whole thing. But the point is, he didn't say, "Oh my God, I got the Naxalites after me. Let's get out of here." No, he was fearless in that way. And just to come to America was fearless. So why did he do that? For the sake of the service. For the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness, so that we could be sitting here now in the Hare Kṛṣṇa temple reading the Bhagavad-gītā, beautiful translation and all of this. This was the order of a spiritual master. You go to preach in the West, because he had good English skills. That was a big thing, and he was, you know, wonderful devotee. So probably, you know, he couldn't do it at first. You know, finally, in his 69th year, he said, now or never, you know. So he had these books he produced at great effort, the first volumes of the first canto. And he got on that boat. Bhakti Vikas Swami has written a wonderful chapter in his book. He wrote a book about Prabhupada. I forget the name of it. But it's all about meditation on Prabhupada getting on that boat, you know, and all the implications of what happened after. It's a wonderful chapter. It's in the database. And we realize how we're all sitting here by the mercy of one who embodied these qualities and who took the order of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which he was just giving the order of Lord Chaitanya, where where my name will be heard in every town and village in the world. Well, how's that going to happen unless we go there? So he went there himself, and he sent his disciples out all over the world, Australia and Africa, everywhere, where he went also. And it proved that there's no barrier. Right in the African, you know, continent, you wouldn't, but the chanting, the dancing, you know, is attractive, and before you long, he has temples everywhere to this day. So that's what these qualities are meant to give us. All right, so what did we read there? That was detachment. Did we read happiness? Okay. Naturally, when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. So this is living in a solitary place, I think. That would go against his grain. One may test himself by seeing how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema going or enjoying some social function, because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subject. But according to the Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical speculation have no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to the Bhagavad Gita,
one should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here. Okay, I'm going to read through to the end. As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that Bhakti Yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, one must consider the relationship between the supersoul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the supersoul cannot be one, at least not in the Bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So bhakti, or devotional service, is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction. In the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1-11, this is explained. Those who are actually knowers of the absolute truth know that the self, the Supreme Self, is realized in three different phases, as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That is the perfection of knowledge. So Prabhupada sums up, beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the Supreme Truth, the Absolute Personality of Godhead, this process is just like a staircase beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now, on this staircase, there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second or the third floor, etc. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks, I am God, because of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth. So, we should study these 20 or so elements of knowledge and understand, as Prabhupada mentions, my Chananya Yogini Bhakti Vicharani, all of them are actually emanate or concomitants of this undeviating devotional service to Krishna, which he mentions in this next to the last verse of the series. And so that's what nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. And he's exploring this because this whole process rests on knowledge, and knowledge is something that we get from a source, from a superior source, and getting this knowledge from a transcendental source. Otherwise, we'll get it from our conditioned brain, that we get through the senses and put something together, which really won't help us to get out of this material world. So Prabhupada has so mercifully given us this knowledge, Bhagavad Gita as it is, giving Krishna's actual teachings. And if we study it, how many times have we been through this? I mean, just the time that our present crew is here, at least twice. But I've been giving these classes since like 89, 90 at the latest. So it never gets old. By the way, I've recorded this entire book, including the purports. If someone wants to, just send me an email at dravida108@gmail.com. And I'll send you the link to the recording, and as a bonus, my little poetry file, which we probably should get to now. So I actually, when you read through the Bhagavad Gita, you get to the 18th chapter, and Krishna sums everything up, and he says, now I'm going to give you, again, the confidential knowledge, and he repeats a verse that's at the end of the 9th chapter, and then the next verse is the kind of culmination. So these two verses kind of summarize the essential teachings. So I'll share those with you now. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishasi satyam te pradijane priyosime sarva dharmam padityajya mame kangsharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshiyasyami ma shuchaha. Ma shucha. Just, Krishna says, just think of me, become devoted, worship me, and bow down low. You'll come to me, O friend. I promise you, this boon I shall bestow. Just give up all other dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjun. From anxiety, be free. So, and that's the jumping off point for studying the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which we also have a class in the mornings. All right, time for one other little nectar poem. So this is a beautiful meditation on Krishna entering the forest of Vrindavan in the morning with his friends and the cows and the gopis looking on. It happens every morning and it's beautiful. Painting has been done of it. So this is in the 21st chapter called Venu Gita. The gopis are singing of Krishna and how he's playing the flute. They're at home, he's in the forest. Starts with this. Barha pidam natavadavapu karnayo karnikaram Bimbrun vasa kakanaka kapisham vajayantin cha malam Randran veno hadada sudaya puriyan gopa vrindaya Vrindaranyam swapadanamanam pravishan gita kirti. With lovely peacock plume upon his head, and fragrant flower placed upon each ear, he enters Braja's wood with graceful tread, a handsome dancing actor without peer. His golden yellow raiment brightly glows, his splendid garland reaches to his knees, and from his luscious lips the nectar flows, and fills his flute with charming melodies. As Krishna thus begins his blissful day, with cowherd friends who sing his glory sweet, he beautifies Vrindavan's forest way, with fine impressions of his lotus feet. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Okay, we have plenty of time. One more. This one's about the holy name. Madhura Madhura Metan Mangalam Mangalanam Sakala Nigamavalli Satpalam Chit Swarupam Sakadapi Padigitam Shraddhaya Helayava Bhagavadanadamatram Tadiyate Krishna Nama. Of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune, it's the perfect paradigm. Of all the Vedic writings, it's the transcendental fruit, the very form of spirit, unalloyed and absolute. When uttered even once with faith, or uttered once with none, from birth and death it surely will deliver anyone. And in the end, it brings pure love for Krishna, life's true aim. So cast away all doubt and chant Sri Krishna's holy name. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bol.